Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the Media Row podcast. I'm Justin Miller. Happy to have you along today for the Media Row pod. Hopefully you're joining us, whether that's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can be sure to get Media Row podcast and like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff as per usual. And rate us on Spotify too. I think you can rate us on YouTube and Apple Podcast as well. So give us any kind of feedback you want, anything you would like to hear more of, any suggestions, things you dislike too. You can say whatever you want. Just happy to have you along here. And we have a lot to get to today. But first and foremost, want to give a huge shout out to Ross and Travis of the rushradio.com for having me on early this morning to talk about really everything. It felt, I texted both of them after the show and said that I've probably done like 3 interviews with them now since they've hopped on and done their own thing after leaving iHeart. Well, I guess Ross and I didn't have a choice, but Trav, since he decided to leave iHeart. But, and this one felt like at home. That one, I texted them both and said that one felt like our normal mornings of just getting together, laughing, giving each other crap, and just talking about anything and everything that came to mind. I mean, Travis was talking about his book he was reading about Thomas Jefferson. I got to talk about John Wesley Powell and Beyond the 100th Meridian, that book that I'm reading. And then we got to talk about Drake, which I always love talking about and was the real reason they had me on. We also talked about squirrels. It was amazing. I loved it. So a huge shout out to Ross and Travis for having me on. I'll be on Monday as well with them to recap the Drake-Bradley game in just the Missouri Valley over the weekend. But we have a lot to get to in our own show today as the Drake Bulldogs, the men, take down Illinois State last night, 84-77. We'll also preview a huge game on the women's side as Drake travels to face one of the best offensive teams in the Missouri Valley Conference in Murray State. So we'll be sure to give our breakdown of that as here we now get set to break down the men, though, first here as the Drake Bulldogs. They win their 11th straight game here against Illinois State, where they won on the road 84-77, their 10th straight against the Redbirds. Bulldogs now 23-2 overall, 13-2 in the conference, 2 games ahead of UNI and Bradley there at 11-4. Illinois State now falls to 7-8 in the Missouri Valley. The Bulldogs took a 40-32 lead at halftime and truly never looked back. Now, we'll get into some of the concerns we had. I have this set up where we're going to go through how Drake won and the good things we saw from the Bulldogs first. And then we'll kind of get into the few concerns I had watching that game. And then, finish out the Drake men talk kind of with a different twist of what I'm really seeing that I'm really excited about. That not only catapults Drake and gives me more confidence about Drake this season, but more about next season and what this team could look like. So let's start off with how Drake won by 7 last night on the road against the Redbirds. First and foremost, what we asked for and what we always will ask for is just balanced offense. Bennett Sturtz, 25 points. Mitch Muscari, 18 points. And Kael Combs off the bench with 13 points. The bench outscored the Redbirds 27-22 with 13 team assists. And that's what this Drake team did so well last night, of just really moving the ball, getting everyone involved, making this not just the Bennett Sturtz game or just singling out a player. It was everyone involved to really put a beating on the Redbirds. And now the scoreboard doesn't look how it felt. I mean, Drake had a 10-plus point lead for the most part of that game. It was just towards the end there, the Redbirds knocked down a couple of threes and in kind of junk time cut down that lead that Drake was holding for the most part of the game. Drake also took advantage of the Redbirds' poor three-point shooting. Part of why they were so balanced, part of why they were able to gain 13 team assists, was they're going up against one of the Missouri Valley's worst perimeter defenses in the Redbirds, who allow near, I think it's like 9 or 10 three-pointers a game. Or it might be 8 or 9. Might be 8 or 9 threes a game. Drake, who only averages 6 a game, they went 9 of 18 from deep, and really that is what catapulted Drake, and what was the huge momentum shift for the Bulldogs last night came from the three-point line. Drake came out of that second half kind of sloppy, way too many turnovers in the second half. They had 6 of them, but they just came out. None of the shots were going down. Illinois State was looking like they were going to make a push. Drake, luckily being up by 8, was able to withstand kind of a run by the Redbirds where Drake would put up, a point or two here and there just to kind of keep the lead at a comfortable distance. But then the Redbirds go on a 7-0 run, and it's looking like, okay, this is going to be another classic Drake game of going to have to sweat it out no matter how good they started or how good they're looking. And then Mitch Muscari decided to say, hold my beer. And a huge play where Illinois State was playing absolutely great, suffocating defense, forcing Drake to really dive deep into that shot clock. With 2 seconds left on the shot clock, Sturts dishes it over near the logo to Muscari, and he drains it at the buzzer of the shot clock. That was the momentum change. After that, Drake went on a 16-8 run, responding to Illinois State's 7-0 run. And that, while Illinois State continued to try to cut it in within 9 multiple times, and while Drake maybe didn't look the best for the most part of that second half, Illinois State was able to shoot, I think, like 47% in that second half. That right there, going on a 16-8 run after a huge shot by one of your best shooters, that is what changed the game. That is what allowed Drake to withstand these runs by Illinois State, because they went on such a great run. They were able to just have a comfortable lead for the better part of that game. And Illinois State, they would get it to within. It felt like they could cut that lead down to 7 to 9 points. And then Drake would just wake up and decide to start putting the ball in the basket. So a huge game by Muscari, 18 points for him. And then finally, something that we shouldn't be shocked of, but it's just always great to see, and it's fun to watch too if you just love the game of basketball. If you want to watch a team that puts up 100 points and maybe has flashy dunks, Drake is not your team, and that's fine. But if you want to see fundamental basketball, if you want to see fundamental defensive basketball, you watch this team. This is your cup of tea. The Drake Bulldogs last night forcing 13 turnovers, 21 points off those turnovers. So they're not only forcing them, they are taking advantage of those turnovers, something that we'd seen the men struggle with prior. And a huge shout out to the big men of Maniau and Abreu. Both of them had a hell of a matchup going up against the best big men in the conference in Chase Walker, who put up 25 points last night and had 15 at halftime, only missed 2 shots. He started the night off 4 of 4, and Drake knew he was going to be a challenge and knew you weren't going to be able to stop him, but can you try to contain him, make the shots difficult for him? And just in terms of, if you were a Valley fan last night watching that game, that was the performance you wanted to see from the 2 stars of the team, because you have Bennett Sturts, who right now is in the lead for the Larry Bird Trophy, and they have Chase Walker right behind him. Chase Walker's averaging 20 points. You have Bennett Sturts, I think, averaging 20 and a half, maybe 21 points a game. So you have Bennett Sturts just averaging a little over him, and both of them go out and they perform and absolutely play their tail off. 25 points for each of them. Both shot efficiently from the field. And while Maniau and Abreu were tasked with guarding one of the best big men in Walker, early on, Walker had the better, had everything on both of them. And then he got Manyao into foul trouble. And Manyao, while he may not be the offensive force, he is a terrific defender. And, a little bit of it got in his own head. I mean, he came close to that technical foul. He had 3 fouls with 16 minutes to go in the second half. And Abreu stepped up. Abreu, while 10 points were still scored by Walker, they were not easy shots. He just was able to make them. And as a coach, as a fan, that's what you just look for. I mean, if Walker is able to hit a 12-foot turnaround jumper with Abreu's hand right in his face, I'm not upset with that. It's the easy layups. It's the easy dunks. It's falling for the pump fake time after time. Those are the ones that get irritating. But Abreu last night was able to really help contain Chase Walker when he had to switch over to him when Manyao was out. But when Manyao and Abreu were in the game, they both were doing such great work in terms of anticipating the passing lanes and jumping those passing lanes. They combined for 7 steals between the two, and Manyao, I mean, he had 4 points, both of them coming off of steals and fast break dunks. Abreu last night, really good job in just terms of his rebounding, his boxing out. He is a guy that does not get talked about enough on this team in just terms of his hustle, in terms of his boxing out, his fundamental plays. He does the dirty work so well, and he's a guy that you don't expect to really do the dirty work just because he always looks so happy on the court. You don't expect him to be the guy that goes, is the one that is always near the loose balls, is willing to take on Chase Walker. But great work out of the big men. And those were the 3 big keys. And in terms of why Drake was able to win, they had balance offensively. They were taking advantage of them leaving Mascari and their 3-pointers, the 3-point line open. And then finally, just that Drake defense continues to be one of the best in the country. And when you get turnovers like Drake did, it equals easy baskets. And that's what Drake did last night. Now, moving kind of towards the concerns we had with last night, like I said earlier, 6 turnovers alone in the second half, way too many turnovers. And now you may sit there and go, well, they only had 10 total turnovers. And I get it that, may not be a lot in terms of what we've seen in the past and what we see from other teams throughout the country. I get that. It was just the style in which they were turning the ball over. It was back to that, man, you're trying to force those bounce passes on the pick and rolls in between 4 defenders in the paint, which they do really well, to be honest. But, man, it makes me, grip the desk every time I see it happen because I'm so nervous that you have 4 dudes in the paint going up against 1 Bulldog. How do you fit that pass in there? But they were able to do it last night, though. I think that second half, they just came out too sloppy. And it could have been, they felt like they were having their 8-point lead. It's human nature to kind of cool down after those 15 minutes. But just the style in which they were turning over the ball was kind of concerning for me. And then it was rare last night. I know they were going up against Chase Walker and the size differential there, but really the rebounding, they were out-rebounded last night. Not by much, but still just last night the rebound seemed like Illinois State just got better positioning. Because while Walker has the size advantage over Manyao and Abreu, it shouldn't be as drastic as it was last night. And again, it wasn't, they didn't out-rebound Drake by 10 or more. It was just more in this, again, with these concerns, they're more in the style. And if you watch that game again, what you saw, you'd be like, man, Drake usually gets that board. Drake usually doesn't turn over the ball there. And so those were really my only 2 concerns for this Drake team last night. There's not a lot to be upset about with winning on the road, winning 11 straight. And last night, like I keep saying, it was pretty comfortable for the most part of that game in Drake terms, because Drake is a team that we've talked about that it's just not their DNA to blow teams out by 15 plus. It's just not in with the style that they play in. It's just not their thing. And maybe Coach McCollum would disagree with me, but it's how the season has really played out for the Bulldogs. But Drake wins their 11th straight. They're now 13-2 in the Missouri Valley. They get now set to play Bradley on Sunday. $7 tickets for general admission, so make sure you go. That is going to be an amazing atmosphere. That rivals the UNI games in terms of atmosphere because Bradley fans travel. Bradley fans are built different. And as a Bulldog fan, it kind of pains me to say that, but as someone who watches the Valley and just respects the Missouri Valley, I respect the way those fans travel. I remember 2 years ago going down to St. Louis, and everyone was telling me, oh, yeah, the first few rounds, there's not a great deal of fans. But they're like, by Friday, they're like, you'll see how Bradley just takes over. And Bradley truly had half of that stadium packed. And then Drake started showing up too. And Drake is getting better year by year in terms of fans traveling. I mean, them being in that Charleston Classic, that was a good showing by the fans. That is something, I mean, that looked like the amount of fans that showed up for the 2008 NCAA tournament run, to be honest. I mean, it is just something has changed. The culture has shifted here at Drake where fans are traveling for their team, and I love it. It is awesome to see. And they'll be able to travel a lot more next year too, because I want to hit on what we're seeing from the growth of the young players, and one in particular with last night is Kael Combs. This sophomore guard continues to just grow and improve day by day and is starting to be looked upon from Sturts, from Mascari, from the veteran guys to help out the offense. I mean, he kind of was set in earlier in the year to kind of just get some reps, don't turn over the ball, just help the guys, get a few minutes of rest, is what it felt like. Now he is a guy. Like, he is someone looked upon for McCollum to get extra minutes, to really produce off the bench as much as Isaiah Howard and as much as Tavion Banks. Kael Combs, sophomore guard, 13 points last night, 5 of 6 shooting. He's averaging 7 points off the bench in the last 5 games, shooting 57%. And he just continues to grow with confidence each and every game. And I love what he's doing in terms of helping out Sturts, because when he comes in, most of the time he's getting the ball. And McCollum is telling him the play calls instead of it being Sturts bringing up the ball. And that does so much for an offense, because now the defense has to worry about Sturts and his backdoor cuts and his off-ball movement. And Kael Combs is a great passer as well. But now he's starting to really prove himself as a scorer and just attacking the basket and not being afraid. There was multiple shots he made last night going up against Chase Walker, who towers over Kael Combs. But we're just seeing the confidence grow from the sophomore guard. And in the first 7 games of the year, he totaled 14 points. Now he's averaging 7.5 per game off the bench, and just setting up to become a key role for next season, along with Isaiah Howard and Tavion Banks. So next year is just going to be a really fun year to watch this team. And to be honest, I don't see Coach McCollum really slowing down anytime soon. But the Drake men, they take on Bradley, who won last night pretty handedly over UIC, I believe, last night. But the Drake Bulldogs, I should check that. I'll double check that real quick. I have it saved here. If you go to Media Row Pod on Twitter, I usually try to share all the Missouri Valley Conference games. And they took down SIU, and that's why I wanted to check it. Took down SIU 78-64 at home. So Bradley now still within 2 games of Drake. UNI still within 2 games of Drake. And Drake has a gauntlet to end this regular season. They have Bradley at home on Sunday. They have to take on UIC at home on Wednesday, which UIC should be a victory. But you always worry about, if they win against Bradley, coming off that emotional win, or now are they looking ahead of UIC to face UNI? I don't think any of that will be true because UIC already beat Drake, so they're looking for that payback. And then Sunday, they head to UNI to face the Panthers on the road. So huge week coming up for the Drake men, but as long as they continue to win, that national media will start to follow. You're starting to see Dick Vitale start talking about the Drake Bulldogs. A handful of CBS sports guy, Chris Hassel, one of my buddies, Chris Hassel was talking about it. You have a bunch of national media starting to really jump on this Drake train because it is something real special that the Bulldogs are doing right now. But while the men continue to win, the women tonight have a huge test going on the road against Murray State. Want to go through some notes, go through some keys for these Drake women. First meeting did not go Drake's way. Drake lost in Des Moines 81-59, part of that 3-game losing streak. Bulldogs, pitiful shooting, 21 of 71, 29%. Only had 14 team assists, which is low for the women's team. I mean, they're averaging 20-plus a game, it feels like. And Dinnebeer, the only Bulldog with 10-plus points. And Dinnebeer is going to have her hands full. The team is going to have their hands full because this is a talented Murray State squad. I mean, top 3 in the conference, one of the best offensive teams you're going to see in the Valley. But everyone is going to be watching the Katie Dinnebeer versus Caitlin Young battle. Now, they're not at the same position. Dinnebeer, of course, point guard, and you have Young at forward. But both were announced mid-major player of the year semifinalists. Caitlin Young right now, senior forward, averaging 20 points per game, 6 rebounds, shooting 56% from the field. And when she went up against Drake, she had no issues. 26 points, 7 assists, 83% on the field. She's averaging 27 points per game since that Drake victory. And we know what Katie Dinnebeer does. She averages over 20 points per game. She's a great defender, just reached over 700 steals, has reached over 700 assists on this in her career at Drake, and is just a pure leader. But what Drake is changing from that 3-game losing streak, from that really tough appearance at home against Murray State, is it's not just Dinnebeer, it's not just Anna Miller. Courtney Becker is going to have to play some really strong defense against Caitlin Young, but her defense continues to get better and better. And then her offensive side, where she's crashing the glass, where she's also getting backdoor cuts. She's getting confident with her 3-point shot, which she's always been confident in, but I think she's looking for her shot now instead of being more passive. And of course, like we said, Abby Alsma continues to just be a stud for the Drake Bulldogs. So really excited to see what this Drake women team is going to do. Tough atmosphere in Murray State. I just think Drake must cause turnovers. They need to take advantage of them. And then speaking of turnovers, Drake is going to really need to protect that ball. They average 17 a game, and Murray State forces 18 a game. Last meeting, Drake fumbled the ball 17 times. And Katie Dinnebeer knows that some of that lands on her. That's been kind of her one chink in her armor, is just too many turnovers. But when you're passing the ball as much as she is, when you're as aggressive as she is, I don't think fans would have it any other way because she's so aggressive. But just the turnovers are going to be crucial tonight. And then, as always, balance. It can't just be Katie Dinnebeer or Anna Miller putting up points tonight. Really need some help. Anna Miller can't get into foul trouble. Got into foul trouble in Des Moines versus Murray State as well. So, turnovers, Anna Miller with foul trouble, and then just keeping it balanced. Continue to get Ava Hawthorne involved. Continue to get Alsma involved early. Becker will be crucial tonight. Becker versus Young on that offense and defensive side. And then it'll just be fun to see what happens tonight as 2 mid-major player of the year semifinalists go head to head. So Drake at Murray State tonight on ESPN Plus at 6 o'clock. Be sure to, as always, follow along on social media like we were doing last night of just kind of posting thoughts and reactions throughout the game. So, and make sure to comment along. It was fun. Had a few people comment along last night with me, and I always appreciate that. Nick McCarger, I saw you posting along with me, so always appreciate you. But everyone, welcome to comment and make this a fun night of just watching Drake basketball. Come on, we get 2 nights in a row of Drake basketball. Sign me up for that daily. Love it. But tomorrow, we're here to Friday already for tomorrow's show, where we will recap, of course, tonight's game, preview the game of the weekend with Drake and Bradley as well, and maybe have some other fun conversations here on Media Row. Just make sure to follow us all along. Huge shout out to DKG Images. All the Drake men and women images, for the most part, come from him, so follow him on social media at DKG Images. Great guy Devin is, great photos, and wonderful of him to allow me to use his work to put into Media Row. It makes us look better, so we appreciate that, Devin. But wanted to give him a shout out because the photos you'll see on YouTube that circulate, those are more than likely his from the home games that he sends me. So have a great Thursday. Stay safe out there. I think the snow's done for today, but it's supposed to hit over the weekend as well. So just stay safe out there, stay warm, and we'll see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock for Media Row.